Hello, Monsters Abound here, and welcome back to Shadow Empires, a game that I really like. I know I didn't do a video on this beforehand, but there has been a fresh development because it's now available on Steam, and there has been an update. You can now get aircraft as well. Ooh, exciting. So this is kind of like a turn-based strategy, 4X, planetary conquest type game, sci-fi. Let's throw that in there as well. It's a game that doesn't treat players very well. It's one of those games that assumes you know what you're doing, and if you don't, it's not going to tell you. It slaps you, it spits in your face, and you come back for more with a small erection. And it's one of those games that's very much like just a one more turn game. Every single I try and leave it, and every time I do, I'm like, but what if I just do these 8 things and it'll change the situation entirely? And it never does, but it feels like it should. So this game is very complex. It's a very deep, complex game. I'm going to throw it in there with games like Dwarf Fortress, with Aurora 4X, Distant Worlds. It's that sort of in that sort of league. It's a game that is published by Slytherin, who do a whole bunch of really interesting games, and it's developed just by one man. One probably dangerous man. If he ever put his mind to world domination, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. Thankfully, instead, he's playing with this, so we're safe for the moment. So this game is basically set in a future where a huge sort of galactic republic spread across the universe and then collapsed. And each of the planets in the galactic republic sort of then had to fend for themselves and eventually collapsed into barbarism. And this kind of takes place a little while after that. And you're sort of like fighting over the ruins of what was. And we've got some sort of areas of the planet here which were damaged by explosions, or there's populations that have been wiped out, and there's also a whole host of dangerous wildlife, and also scavengers and minor factions, mutants, and all that kind of stuff to deal with. So it's a game which has a fantastic planetary generator. So every single planet you play on is going to be completely different, and it's going to have completely different biomes as well. This one I kind of rolled is quite interesting, because it's kind of like a dune-like planet. So we've got a lot of deserts, but we've also got these kind of little oases, and that's quite good because that kind of gives us access to water. Now, so there might be planets that you play on which don't have any surface water. And in that case, you're going to have to get water by other means. Now, you can get it from water sort of aquifers, like this one here. So there's some water here, 234.300 units. So there we go. And with that, then with that water, you can then grow food. And obviously, if you don't have any greenery, or even if your planet just can't support your farms, then obviously you're going to have trouble growing food. So you're going to have to build. Are these? What are these? Let's just have a check. Can I tell what that is? Might be an agri-dome. I think it's an agri-dome. Yeah, so these here are agri-domes. So these guys here, so this is another major regime. So this is a major faction, just like me. And they have no access to water, unfortunately, apart from their mines. So they're having to mine that way. They're also having to grow food in agri-domes because they can't, they don't have any growable land. I, however, started around the Dora Reservoir. So I actually have plenty of access to water, which is fine. I've also got this green land. So actually, I started off quite nicely. I started off with a really good little position here. So this was quite a nice little start for me. Obviously, if I'd started in the middle of the desert, then things might be a little bit different. But we started right next to a nice big source of water. However, with that said, I've actually struggled to find any resources like metal. So I've kind of struggled with that. I do, however, have these ruins here. So this is ruins of a great city before the fall. And I'm now scavenging all the bits and pieces there. I've got some other tiles here I could scavenge on if need be. But my resources are actually looking pretty good. So I'm doing fairly well here. So I started off over here. I pushed up, and there was another minor regime here. This was farmers. So I took out the farmers. And then I kind of captured up to these mountains here. And also there was a road already constructed that I then travelled up to and found a major regime here. And actually managed to capture quite a lot of territory from them before they realised who I was. I think there was another minor regime here. It was these slavers, I think. These slavers have been a pain in the arse for quite a while, but these slavers have kind of captured all this territory down here. That allowed me to capture that off them. And when our borders solidified, we can see I'm actually right up to, I think this is their capital here. So this is my front line, and you can see I've got some battalions of infantry here. So these are my infantry. This is a 4th Machine Gun Infantry Division. So you've got some guards here and some AMGs. They're also backed up by an engineering team and a syndic priest, and that's going to give them some bonuses. So all these guys here, sort of like ringed in purple, are actually part of a battalion. And where's the battalion HQ gone? Oh, it's here. There it is. So these guys are the 1st Infantry Machine Gun Brigade. So these guys here are all this sort of battalion, and they're sort of holding the front there for me. I've also got the 2nd Motorised Battalion. They are kind of like holding this front over here. I've actually got some militia units here as well. Now, the militia units are kind of like free. You don't have to build them. They just sort of like pop out into existence. But they're just not very good, right? They're irregular infantry. They're the kind of people with pickup trucks with machine guns on the back. That's what the militia are, and therefore they're not going to be as effective as proper infantry and proper sort of like army units. But in a pinch, they can do generally okay. So we're kind of like, we've got this border here fortified. There's a little bit of a gap here, which I'm a little bit concerned about, which I probably need to get some more infantry just to hold that, just in case. We actually had a fairly good relationship with this major regime here. So this is less so. We actually had a fairly good relationship until quite recently when it all started going wrong. So that's unfortunate. These guys over here, the Caesar Commune, we've kind of had a pretty poor relationship with them off the get-go. But recently it's got significantly worse. Now, I've been having all 3 of us have been having some issues with these slavers here. Now, the slavers have been sort of like based in the cult domes. This is a minor regime. So these guys are sort of like irregular units. There's a lot of them, though. And also, because they're a minor regime, they don't worry about logistics. So logistics is a big part of this game, and if you don't keep all of your units supplied with logistics, then basically they become less combat effective, and also they start dying of cowardice or starvation, whichever one you think. And personally, I think if they're just going to drop dead with malnutrition, that's basically just cowardice, and they should be shot for that. But you know, who knows? Anyway, so logistics flows out from your cities and also from these. You can construct these lorry depots. What is this? A truck station. There we go. A truck station. So we can actually have a look at the logistics. We can have a look at the current points. So we can see there's quite a lot of points flowing along these roads. You notice they do flow along the roads. Now, units can pick up supplies from a little distance away. So we go use points. We can actually see that although these units actually moved away from the road. So although they are not on the road, they are actually still picking up supplies, but that is limited, and also depends on terrain. So in mountains, it's very difficult to keep your units resupplied, which means fighting in mountains is an absolute ball ache. And because of that, beating back these slavers has been a bit of a chore, but we have done it. We have actually pushed them back. However, I'm now thinking, why do I need to take this territory? Because to be honest, fighting deeper into the cult dooms, it's just going to be an absolute nightmare. And it's going to leave me a little bit cut off. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these infantry back over to the Thirio Bank. And we're just going to defend that because we've got a nice little mountain range there. It's going to be quite defensive if we need to hold them there. And also they're going to harass our 2 opponents, so that just seems like a better option to me. We did also push out into this. Now there is a little industry over here that's going to give us a little bit more industry points, but to be honest, 20 industry points, not really worth it. And this leaves who are these guys? The 4th Infantry. This leaves the 4th Infantry Battalion a little bit cut off, because if the Caesar Commune attack us, they will quite quickly sort of like manage to sort of surround us and overrun us. If they cut off the roads, and obviously logistics can't flow to our units, that will then cause us a little trouble. So what I'm actually going to do is pull these infantry back away from this front line, I think. So we're going to pull back over here. The idea being that, obviously, we've got some tanks here as well, they'll pull back as well. The idea being that if they do attack, they will overrun this very, very quickly, but then, of course, they'll hit the mountains. Their logistics won't be able to pass through that very easily. They'll have to try and push through this pass. This road I constructed. You can construct roads through mountains, but it does cost a huge amount of industrial points, so it is quite an engineering feat to manage it. But that's fine, because if they overrun that, then that's fine. And once we've kind of got, like, we've held them at a point, then we can push out. If we manage to get some more units up here, we can construct some more units, then maybe we can like push back here if they don't declare war on us anytime soon. And then at that point, then potentially we can look at then, you know, if we've got like a mobile battalion, so a motorized battalion, we can maybe think about coming down through this road over here and cutting their units off. And at that point, they're in a lot of trouble as well. So I've been dealing with that up here. Now to southwest, yes, to the southwest, I've built a new town of Mayfield here. That's to get access to these scavenging points over here. We've also got some very, very rare archaeology. So this is stuff that's left over from the the Galactic Republic days. And this will give us some nice items to use, which is quite useful. I've got a fair few items already, and I've been spending them on my characters, which we'll take a look at in a second. And I've also been pushing down into the Badlands, down into the Vano Span and the Pilar Erg. Don't know who named that. Anyway, so I sent militia units down here, and they were actually dueling with some of the Free Folk. The Free Folk are kind of like Fremen from Dune, kind of like natives. I mean, we're all natives, I guess. But they're sort of like a subsistence, scavenging, sort of like, you know, militia type force. And we were having quite a lot of trouble with them in the span down here. My militia units were dueling with them, and they were holding their own, but they weren't managing to push them back. Finally, we managed to get another division here, a little battalion, the 5th Motorised Battalion, came down here, and they have pushed them back. We're now pushing into the Tomon era territory, so this is a minor regime. To be honest, there's very little down here, though. There's not much actually down here, and to be honest, that makes me think, like, why bother? You know, if there was some, like, scattered towns and stuff, then I could see the point, but to be honest, at this point in time, I'm very much like, you know what, if we can just maybe get a non-aggression with them or something, then I'm kind of happy with that. There doesn't seem to be much down there. There's not really much to worry about. There is, however, some rare earth down here, which I would like. So I'm actually going to construct a rare earth mining facility here. That's going to take one machine, 1,000 peeps, 125 metal, 125 industry for 2 rounds. It's going to cost us energy. It's only going to cost us workers as well. But it's going to produce us some rare earth every turn. So we're going to pop that there. And that will start constructing. Construction also uses logistics, so if you're trying to construct something in the middle of nowhere, that's obviously going to be very difficult. But we've actually got a truck station down here because I wanted to keep my units down here supplied. And so we've already got logistics there, which is absolutely fine. We do have some radiation down here as well, and that's it. Basically, it reduces combat readiness, so our units down here are going to be less combat ready than they probably should be. So this is combat readiness down here. Combat readiness is like a combat multiplier. So units will start off with it will count down when they move, because obviously they're on the move. But once they've like sat still for a few turns, they will then come up to 100 combat readiness. But attacking and defending will reduce that. So will be being shelled. And so if you're trying to push through a front line like this, it's a good idea to try and soften it up first. Because if you don't, then all their units are going to be at 100 combat readiness. And they're going to be very, very tough to dislodge. So that readiness is very important. So having some radiation, which is going to reduce our readiness. Now, it's only reducing it by 10 at the moment because the radiation here isn't actually too bad. So that's fine. But if we were in like some heavy radiation zones, it might be massively impacting it. However, in that event, we can actually research like rad filters. So we go and have a look at our technology, which is over here. So we actually have like a padded environment suit here. So that would, if we could equip that to our units, that would obviously stop the radiation from having an effect on our units, which would be quite nice. We've also got rad filters for the vehicles and stuff, and we can actually design new models of all kinds of shenanigans as we research them. So because like there's a Crusader light tank here, and this has been something I have designed. So it's got a 25mm howitzer gun, issued 25mm steel plating with a medium diesel engine, a somewhat unpowered engine. So it's basically you can like design these units, and there's also a whole thing to do with like sometimes you design a unit and it's not particularly good. And I think it's something to do with either the STR design or the B design. But again, it's one of those things where there is a manual, but I can't be bothered to read it, so that's fine. You can also see like how many of your units are in any particular. So there's actually we've got some guards here, and I think there's guards Mark II as well. Yeah, so we can see there's still some guard Mark 1s in the 3rd Light Infantry Brigade and the 5th Motorised. So we need to upgrade those, ideally, to bring them up to our guard 2. Which are armed with better weapons. So we can actually, if we have a look at these, guys. There we go. So they've got a slug thrower and an environment suit. However, if we go and have a look at the Guards Mark II, they've got automatic rifles and environment suit. Now we could upgrade those again and get the padded environment suit potentially. That would give us a little bit more defense, and the automatic rifles giving us a little bit more attack. The infantry are a fairly good standard unit to have. I don't know if they're actually any good though, because I don't know what this means. I need to look that up. So that's not how you design units, and you can then recruit units by raising a formation, and you've got a different bunch of formations here. They can either be independent, or you can recruit a battalion, so that has like an HQ unit, which sort of like gives them some certain bonuses, and also allows you to provide a leader to that unit, which then further provides them bonuses. So independent units are quite good for if you just want, say, 50 artillery. You can just grab 50 artillery. You don't have to put the resources in, because obviously recruiting a brigade is going to cost a lot more resources than just getting just a little independent unit. Though you can attach independent units to existing organisation HQs, so you can actually say take an infantry division and then give it some artillery to look after, that kind of thing. Now you also, and this is like a big part of the game, is you also have your leaders. Now your leaders are the people who oversee your battalions. They also oversee your different councils, and they have their own sort of needs and wants and likes and all that kind of stuff. So we'll take a look at, let's take a look at this Ignatius Noonan, this guy here. So this is the commander of the SHQ. So this is like, he's like the overall commander of our armed forces, and he quite likes me. 92. It's going down a little bit, but that's fine. He likes autocracy. He likes hearts, he likes government, and he likes mind, and he doesn't really dislike anything. So that means you get certain events sometimes that sort of like push you in a certain direction. And leaders that don't like that direction will lose relation with you. Leaders that like that direction will like you more. All that kind of good stuff. And you've also got like all these stats down here. So his war score is actually fairly good. His intelligence is not particularly good, but that's fine, because I don't think he's really... Yeah, that's for directors and governors, so it's not super important for him. Strength is certain skill rolls. Yeah, so basically, occasionally he'll require... certain events will require certain skill rolls. For example, a governor might report that there's unrest, and depending on how good they are with dealing with that, how good their stats are, you'll get bonuses to rolling against to try and stop that. Obviously, if they're not particularly good governor, then things might get significantly worse. So putting people in the right position is quite important. You also have this capability rating here, which goes up from 1 to 5, and it measures how sort of like useful your leader's going to be. He's 2. He's okay. To be honest, we probably want someone better as the SHQ commander, but he's fine for the moment. So that's generally okay. You've got these personality stats down here as well. This is all kind of quite important. It does various things. Things like ambition. So this guy is fairly ambitious, and that means if he ever, say, tried to leave us, if he didn't like us and he wanted to get out of there, then he may well rebel and take some of his armed forces with us. And as obviously the head of the SHQ, that would be quite bad for us. So that's something to keep in mind. But obviously at the moment, he quite likes us. There's a whole bunch of stuff here as well, like history logs. So various, like what he's trying to spend XP in increasing. Got a skill log. So this is what he's done. He basically gives bonuses to all of our armed forces. So that's all fairly good. So you've got all these different leaders, and they're also different factions. So Ignatius here is actually Lawful Union faction leader. And we've also got Carl down here, who's the Steel Front faction leader. So Carl is the director of the Supreme Command Council. So I believe this is the council that deals with creating new unit types. So for example, you might not start with the ability to create tanks. Carl here will go, hey, how about we put a box on some treads and put a gun on it? And we're like, fuck it, Carl, you've done it again. So Carl is basically, I think, the guy in command of that. In charge of that. Again, he's got quite a good war score. We can actually see what it's pretty, I don't know. I can't remember what the councils do. The asterisks show kind of like what skills he's likely to use. So covert ops and diplomacy. His charisma's not particularly great, but his war score's okay, and his capability is 3, so he's generally fine. So he's the head of the Steel Front, and you can see there's different faction leaders here as well. Barbara is the Democratic School faction leader. She hates meritocracy, but likes commerce, democracy, and heart. And she really likes us. And that's because I have been giving her a lot of shit. So a lot of these feats here are actually stuff that I've given her. And a lot of this, like the protocol android, the pheromone device, and the cortical stimulator, those are all items I've dug up from archaeology. And they come in as cards. And this is how you sort of like interact with most of the game, is these cards. Now you get them, they are generated by your councils, I'm not 100% sure how. But they're generated for your councils, and they basically, so like for example, the majors here. So this is going to let us do things with the major factions. So we might be able to say, hey, what about trade? And we can say we're going to target the Zalesso. So we can execute this, and it says, well, it's going to be executed by this guy who is Cyrus Selite. So he is our Director of Foreign Affairs. And it's got a difficulty of 192. Now, the diplomacy roll is 1d100 plus 37. Now, obviously, you're like thinking, if the difficulty is 192 and you can get a maximum of 137, that doesn't look like it's going to work. And you'd be right, it's not, because Cyrus is not a particularly good diplomat, to be honest. If he was better, then we'd get a better potential chance on that. But obviously, because these guys are hostile against us, that's not going to help. So that's a bit of a problem for us. We've also got cards for dealing with minor factions. We've got covert ops here, so we could send a spy to go and have a look and see what's going on in their empire. We've got nation cards here, so this is going to affect our entire nation because they're like a cabinet retreat. We can recruit another leader, maybe. And we could do a governor convention that's going to help level up our governors a little bit. There's also, these are all cost political points, which are this little fist icon here. Now, this is generated by our government every turn. And it's, the number we generate is based on the number of bureaucratic points that our entire empire is generating, and those are generated through, I think, mostly buildings. So we have buildings like an administration centre that generates bureaucracy points. Those are then split out between your different councils. So the more councils you have, the less political points you have available each turn. So some of these don't cost very much. For example, decreased income tax only going to cost 6 to do, but war games would cost 38, and that's quite a lot. So you can't just play all your cards every turn. You have to think about what you're going to do. Some other cards also require feat points. It says 50 political points. That's not true. These are actually, this is actually Destiny? Fate points. There we go, fate points. We need 1 fate point to play this. Now, fate points are like political points, but you don't generate them passively. They are generated from time to time by entering different eras, certain events, and all that kind of stuff. You can also generate them yourself by actually giving yourself some bad things. So, for example, if we were to be paranoid, get some paranoia in there, that would give us 2 fate points. It would also increase fear in a random zone. Now, this is actually not too bad a one to play, because fear is not necessarily the worst thing to have in a zone. Danger is quite bad. Fear is not the worst, because fear will actually suppress unrest, whereas danger will generate it, I think. We also got tariffs here, so we wanted to increase tariffs, all that kind of stuff. HQs, so if we wanted to give our battalions, so say we wanted one of our infantry divisions to entrench, we could play that. It's going to increase our maximum entrenchment, but reduce our overall attack. We also got zones, so we could play these on our zones. For example, we've got things like a volunteer drive, so this would result in, what would that do? What would it do? Something. Base difficulty will be 100. Yeah, it doesn't actually say what it's going to do, though, does it? We will need recruits. Okay, I think what basically what it's going to do is it's going to add recruits to our pool, which is how then it's one of the resources we need to generate in military units, basically. I think that's what that's going to do. So things like private investment, so we could generate private investment in that zone. There's also more fates cards down here, so we've got Labor Day, that's going to cost 1. Docile AI, that would generate a walker unit. So one types of unit. We've got travelling teachers over here, so we can play that and build a school in one of our settlements. We've also got leader cards, so this could be potentially if a leader's starting to become a problem, we may like try and get rid of them with a golden retirement. We've also got things like Shadow Spy, Investigate Leader, so if they are corrupt and they're stealing from you, you might be able to recoup some of your losses. Also got some fate points here. This will give little bonuses here, so a little personal guards would increase their personal combat skill, all that kind of good stuff. And you've also got units here. Now the units, these are cards that you can play on your individual units, and they will give them certain bonuses. These blue cards here are ones that I've got from archaeology, so these are going to be quite potent. So things like the assassin droid is going to be quite powerful, the warrior droid as well. A wasp hive, I have no idea what it does, but it provides them with a bonus in combat. And the gravimetric shield, which is going to give them, again, a bonus in combat. And you probably want to use that on some very, very tanky units. Maybe like tanks. Maybe. We've also got Syndic Police because we've got a cult in our empire, and that cult is providing us with some free units, basically free cards we can play on all of our infantry and military units should we want to, and that's going to give them a little bit of a defensive increase in power. So those cards get generated every turn, and basically that then lets you sort of like interact with your units and zones, leaders, and all that kind of good stuff. This game is really, really interesting. There's a whole bunch of other stuff as well, things like so you have assets in your city you can build. So you saw me build the mine down there, but also you've got like a private industry. So all these brown buildings down here, these are ones that have been constructed by the private industry, and that's actually providing us with some industrial points. So they're going to build their own industry in the settlements, and we can also build our own industry, which we have done here. We've actually got an automated factory, which I dug out of one of the archaeology sites. That's going to give us industry. We've also got an industry building here that's going to give us a little more industry as well. So your private industry and your private sort of like your private sector will build buildings that will help your settlements as well if you foster that. So that's quite nice. You can always, take them over if you want. You can, nationalize all that shit depending on how many credits you have. There's a trade system as well, so you can buy stuff you don't have and sell stuff you have lots of. For example, we've got a lot of rare earth. I could flog all of that for quite a few credits. That's going to keep us fairly buoyant. And I do really need to get some more infantry to sort of like man my borders. But I did last turn actually pick up a new battalion, a mechanized battalion. This comes with a bolter bus. So our motorized battalion only has these green buses. They have no combat ability. But our mechanized has the bolter bus, which does actually have some killy power. So it can actually fight in combat as well, which gives us a little bit of extra strength in those battalions, which is quite nice. So Shadow Empires, really, really cool game. If you like this kind of thing, if you like a game which is you just mull over, you just sit there sort of mulling over it and then making some moves and then looking out the window and realizing it's 8 AM the next morning and you spent all night playing this game. That's this kind of game. It's not particularly cheap. It's about £30 on Steam, but I think if you like these kind of strategy games, and it's got a really nice like sci-fi bent to it. So you can actually, if we have a look at the models, I think. No, tech. No. The type. There we go, type. Yeah, there we go. So you can see you can like research up to things like heavy walkers, robotic infantry. You've got wide area shields, all that kind of really cool stuff. So it's like very, very sci-fi jetpack infantry as well. So if you like these kind of like military games, but you want a bit of a sci-fi bent on it, then this Shadow Empires is a really good shout. It's just a really fun game, and I'm going to play some more of it. One of these days I would like to play it on stream, but it's I don't know how long I've spent playing this game, but it must be at least 2 days, and I'm going to be honest, I don't stream enough, and I don't have enough time to make a video series on it, unfortunately. But maybe one day if I get like far enough in a game and it gets to an interesting point, then maybe I'll do some streams on it. We shall have to see. In the meantime, Daz Tactics and Tortuga Power do some very good tutorial videos on Shadow Empires, and that's how I learned most of the stuff that I know now, because I can't be bothered to read the manual. So go check them out if you would like a little bit more information on Shadow Empires. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.